It's time for the Brouhaha Sports Show. Brouhaha Sports with award-winning sports writer Dale McKee and co-host Marshall Wood. Talking sports with the legends of the game and famous sports personalities. Brouhaha! Now to Marshall and Dale with tonight's guest.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's Brouhaha. Marshall Wood and Dale McKee here with you to check out what's going on around our area and maybe even the nation and the world in sports. You can't ever tell with us, can you, Dale?
I guess not. I mean, I don't even know where you're going on this trip you're going on.
Well, I tell you what, I'm going to begin my trip like I always do.
How's that?
With your sideline view.
Oh, my goodness. Oh, my goodness.
I mean, if you've got the well, flowing before you, why go try to dig one somewhere else?
Oh, my goodness.
You like that?
I like that.
All right.
Yeah.
But I don't ever want this well that is you, Dale, Dale the well, to dry up. So you just keep spouting forth all this knowledge you have over sports, and we'll always have something to talk about on the Brouhaha. Good stuff. That being said, Mississippi in baseball, oh my goodness. I mean, a couple of years ago, State won the NCAA tournament. Ole Miss, of course, they've kind of out of the way. Southern Mississippi's made a tournament. So much stuff going on, great stuff with different levels of baseball. I mean, Mississippi, I see here, Dale, you talking about Southern Miss. They got kind of hot and got themselves into the NCAA tournament. How do you feel about where they are, over there at Auburn? You like where they are? You like their chances? Or what do you think about all that?
Yeah, a lot of people are kind of, had comments yesterday that they thought since they had won the conference that they should be hosting a regional instead of Coastal Carolina, who actually won the regular season championship. But the way I look at it, Southern Miss went through a spell there about probably, I guess when they were trying to get everything situated with their pitching and everything. They went through a spell there where they lost a game or two to Ole Miss and a game or two to State, and they lost to like Louisiana Tech. So I think that non-conference schedule that they had prepared them for this streak that they're on, because actually, except for the Louisiana team they played the last weekend in the regular season, they had about 3 weekends there where they swept everybody because they were playing lower tier teams at that time, like a South Alabama and Arkansas State,
right,
and folks like that. So I think that they have transformed themselves again. They always seem to have a winning streak during the season. I think last year they won 15 straight. This year they won 14 straight, it appears, of the season. But to win 19 of your last 21 games, that's pretty impressive. And the teams that beat them are actually in one of them is in the tournament. And that would be Louisiana, who beat them one of the 3 games in Hattiesburg to end the regular season. So I think they got as good a chance as anybody. Pitching's going to be the key, and they really came through in that tournament because they had to play 2 games on Saturday and 1 game on Sunday, and that uses up a lot of pitching. And then when you get in tournament play, it's your depth of your pitching.
Yeah.
You can, and they got Tanner Hall, and they're going to open with Sanford at 1:00 this Friday, and Tanner Hall's probably going to toe the rubber, and then the next day they'll probably get Auburn.
Yeah.
And so that will be a challenge for them.
Will they pitch Tanner in the opener, or would they save him? How does that work?
I think that you got to stay in the winner's bracket as long as you can.
Yeah.
And so I don't think you want to go in the loser's bracket the first day there.
Yeah.
So I think you go with Tanner.
Okay.
But now, Scott Berry's won a lot more college baseball games than I have.
He won a bunch of them.
So him and their next coach, Coach Oz, I'm sure they'll make the best decision because they seem like they got a little better record than I have.
Southern Miss, William Carey, we've talked about them and what a great program they got. They still going?
Yes, they won their first two games. They won last night, Monday night, and Bobby Halford, their great coach, who we had on here at the show a couple of weeks ago, he won his 1,300th game, all at William Carey.
That's crazy.
It
That's
really
crazy.
is.
You think about the coaching that they have at William Carey Baseball and Southern Miss Baseball, and how long those coaches stay there. A lot of good stuff in Hattiesburg. Okay, how about the two best teams in the NJCA Division II softball, both out of Mississippi?
That's right.
I mean, it just goes on and on. Tell us about that, Dale.
Well, we had Colin. I think Jones and Colin were in the finals. They playing up in Spartanburg, South Carolina. Now, what's odd about that is that Jones won the regular season title, but Colin won the regional. And so they go up there and they end up playing, I believe, 3 games up there. So over the last couple weeks of the season, they played 6 times.
Wow.
And of course now
They've met.
yeah. So they've, but in the end, of course, living in the Jones district, Jones and attending Jones, I was really pulling for the Bobcats, but Colin had a little girl here from Waynesboro, a little West girl down at Clarion, and you probably know her famous dad, Day, the air conditioning man.
Mm-hmm.
And so, we're proud of her getting to where that World Series were
Yes, sir,
around
buddy.
Waynesboro.
Well, we also had, just to highlight, we also had, East Central Community College played in the NJCA D2 World Series. They're out. Jackson State played, of course, in the SWAC. They completed. Bellhaven softball fell twice at Mount Berry NCAA Division II Super Regionals this past season. So lots of great stuff in Mississippi baseball. And we're going to continue with that with our guest tonight. Is that correct? We're going to talk some baseball with our guest
Yes,
tonight. Tell us about our guest.
All right, we're going to talk to Tyler Cleveland. He's going to be informing us about the Mississippi State, or the Mississippi High School State Baseball Championships this week.
Okay. Well, let's tell you what. Without any further ado, let's take a break here from our sponsors, and then Dale and I are going to be back with Tyler Cleveland, tonight's guest, right after this commercial. See you then.
Phillips Building Supply in Laurel, your hometown building supply store since 1954. We are locally owned and pride ourselves on helping our customers find exactly what they need. From foundations to roofs to doors and windows, Phillips has it. For tools, hardware, lumber, and plywood, visit Phillips Building Supply.
Welcome to the show, Tyler Cleveland. Tyler, we always love catching up with you because you catch us up with high school, what's happening in the high school ranks. So me and Marshall are honored to have you again today. And let's start off. I know baseball's coming up next week, but let's talk about softball for just a few minutes. Tell us, let's just go through and we'll start down at 1A and work our way up. And you just kind of tell us something about who won, and if there's a first time, 10th time, 20th time to win one. But one name before we ever start, I'm looking down there. Where's Neshoba Central's name?
Uh-oh.
Here's the deal, guys. They didn't make it. I mean, this would have been 10 in a row for them.
What?
They what?
This would have made how many
Yeah.
times?
Yeah, they had won it about a bazillion times in a row from what I could tell, and they just didn't get there this year. It was one of those things where they got knocked out in the semifinal round by Saltillo, and it was a crazy game too. They were down 4-1 in the deciding rubber match of North State, and they rallied back to tie it, to send it to extra innings, and then in the 10th inning, they lost by 1 run.
Wow.
It was pretty shocking. I had a good friend of mine, Brad Locke, that works for the Northeast Mississippi Daily Journal. He was up there and just happened to stop by. He was on his way to Hattiesburg because it happened the night before the state championship started, and he just happened to stop by there, and he called me on his way out and said, I saw the craziest thing I've ever seen. So it was a pretty exciting just to kick off the week. And then we had some great softball down in Hattiesburg. I mean, you look at the teams that won. You mentioned in 1A Hamilton, in 2A, I believe it was, East Union beat Lloyd Star. And that was actually the last one to finish. It got delayed by rain a little bit. But in 3A, Boonville won for the second year in a row. Great story in 3A I'll get to in just a second. But in 4A, I want to say it was West Lauderdale that won it. 5A was George County, and then 6A was Northwest Rankin beating South Panola in what was a really, really tight series. They won both games 4-2, but both of those games could have gone either way. I think the story of the week, though, guys, was in 3A with Boonville and the pitcher, Hallie Burns. She was a senior this year, and if they had a Miss Softball award, she would have won it each of the past 2 years. But she won it as a senior in this inaugural year. And over the course of the season, so she played on their state basketball championship team. And so she went straight from the court to practice. Like, they won the state championship in basketball. She was at softball practice the next day, and she basically hasn't sat down this year. She pitches every game. End of the year, she gets this hip issue that's just really bothering her, and she just can't get over it. But she guts it out. You can tell she's in pain. She pitches all 14 innings of the championship series, I think she made it 6 innings in the last game, but all shutouts, no earned runs, and just dominates to win and get series MVP. It was one of the gutsiest performances I've ever seen on a softball field, and it made for a great story.
Wow.
Well, listen, I also know that George County won for the first time in school history, and that was a little surprise, wasn't it, that they won 5A?
It was, and then they had to erase an early deficit in the second game. As I wrote, I kind of ambushed them in game one. I think I'm not sure that Saltillo was expecting that. Of course, they were playing on short rest, as I mentioned, had beaten Neshoba Central the night before in a 10-inning game. But, I thought George County kind of jumped all over them in that first game. Then in the second game, Saltillo took that 2-1, took an early 1-0 lead, and they had to come back and beat them and scratched out a 2-1 win. Was really happy for Coach Casey McCann and that program. I mean, it was a really fun series. I thought that, and what was so crazy about it is the A.K. Willingham was probably the player of the year in North State for Saltillo, the starting pitcher. And George County just did a really, really good job against her, especially in that first game, kind of jumped on her early and then did just enough to beat her in that second game. So I was really impressed with that program. And, man, I'll tell you that George County, the fan base really showed up for them. They had a huge crowd both games.
What about Northwest Rankin in 6A? Was that their first state championship, or are they considered a softball power?
Well, they are not considered a softball power. It was their first championship in a couple of years, to remember how long it had been. But it had been a while for that program. But, I mean, it's no surprise. I mean, I think they were one of the favorites going into the season because of their starting pitcher, Jolie Hayes, who started both games for them in the series. Funny story for you guys. The day before their game one, she had a giant glass of chocolate milk that morning on her way down to the game, and it didn't sit well with her, and she ended up getting sick.
Oh.
And in the first 3 innings of the game, she gave up 2 home runs, and I think she'd given up 1 all season. She gave up 2 home runs to South Panola in the first 3 innings, and then there was this weather delay for about an hour, and it gave her a chance to get her feet back under her. She was shut down the rest of the game, and she was shut down in game 2 completely, and they ended up winning. And I asked her after the second game, I was like, no chocolate milk this morning? She said, no, sir.
No, sir.
Divine intervention on that weather delay, huh?
Well,
That's right.
well, now, I believe if my information's correct, West Lauderdale's on a little roll, aren't they? Isn't that like their 5th in a row or state championship?
Yeah, they're one of those schools that does well with the stick and ball sports, Dale. They are absolutely on a roll, and of course they're on a roll in baseball as well. So no surprise there. They dominated. They're the only. I think they're the only team to win by 10-run rule over the weekend. Of course, they did that to clinch the 4A championship over North Pike. They won 11-0.
Wow.
And what was crazy about that is the Mabry Eason girl, who transferred in halfway through the season from Russell Christian in Alabama. She joined that team halfway through the year, and she ended up hurling a no-hitter in that clinching game. So they were already good before they got her. And when I first laid eyes on her, she walked in. She's just a sophomore. I think she's like 5'10". She's long and lanky, and she's got a great build for a hitter. So I think the future is bright over there too. I mean, it's not like they're done. I think they're going to be right back in it next year.
All right. Well, let's switch gears to the boys on the diamond and talk about the state baseball tournament that's going to start next Tuesday, I believe. It's going to start tonight because we are taping this show for the May 30th edition. I apologize for that. It's going to start tonight, okay, Tyler? But you don't go to the ballpark tonight, okay? All right? You just hold up, okay? You go when you're supposed to, okay? I'm just trying to tell our audience that we're taping this a little bit early because of Memorial Day holidays. Anyway, well, tell us about the baseball tournament that starts this week.
Well, it's the same format as the softball. It's all best of 3 series, and the way they've got it set up, we're playing on Tuesday, May 30th. Today is our first 3 games. We got the 1A game, the 3A game, and the 6A game. And then Wednesday we'll do 2A, 4A, and 5A. The game times are 1, 4, and 7 for every day. And then we'll start playing game 2s on Thursday, 1A, 3A, 6A, and game 2 for 2A, 4A, and 5A on Friday. After that, weather permitting, and if the Lord's willing and the creek don't rise, we'll have played all those games.
Yeah.
And then we'll start game 3s on that Saturday and possibly Sunday if we need to. And they'll slot them in order of how they finish. So if 1A goes to a game 3 first, then they would play the first game on Saturday. We've got some fantastic matchups. It is not like softball. Unlike in softball, we had 11 of our 12 teams were there for the first consecutive year, if that makes sense. Like we had one returning team that had played in the championship the year before. In baseball, we've got a bunch of rematches and a bunch of teams that you're used to seeing here, with the notable exception of Gulfport in 6A, which defeated Northwest Rankin in 3 games to get to the championship against Lewisburg. That was kind of the big shocker. The rest of these teams, East Central and Saltillo in 5A, that's a rematch. West Lauderdale is back in the state championship, this time against Purvis instead of Sumrall. In 4A. In Class 3A, you've got Amory, who may be the best story in the entire state, against St. Stanislaus. In 2A, you've got East Union. That's just another stick and ball sports school, Dale. But they're 28-5, and they're playing Pisgah in the 2A championship. And then in 1A, you've got West Union and Resurrection, who won it all last year, just swept Biggersville. So a bunch of teams that you are kind of used to seeing here. And I think you get that in baseball a little bit more than you do in softball, so no surprise. But just a ton of good prospects on all these teams, Dale.
Yeah, I'm more familiar with East Central and Purvis because of our area and the teams that the schools play around here. But I did see that Pisgah, this will be their first ever trip to the state championships. So it is, and
they've been knocking on the door forever. I covered them, and I guess it would have been the half championship last year, and they almost got here. Now they beat Scott Central. They had a little bit easier road than they usually do this year for whatever reason, but they beat Scott Central. They're 25-7. They're a really good team. But Coach Sam Starnes does a great job out there. They've got a bunch of really good players. You're looking at a catcher like Aiden Swales and guys like Gavin Bledsoe in the infield, and even in the outfield, Ryder White is a young guy who's just been great for them. Mason Huddleston. They've got a bunch of really good players, so it's no surprise to see them here. Now they got their work cut out for them against East Union, the team that is just, they blew out East Webster in the North State. They scored 19 runs in 2 games and swept them. And they've got Landon Harmon, the sophomore, who was so good as a freshman in the state championship last year, and then got infielder like Braden Pierce. This guy, he leads a good group of seniors, and I think East Union is going to be tough to beat. I mean, it's baseball, though. I think Pisgah could easily do it. They just got to have some good pitching performances.
Well, listen, I've living in the Pine Belt, I see a lot about the Parker twins from down at Purvis. Have you been able to see them yet?
I have watched them online. I've watched them on the NFHS network. I have not seen them in person, and was worried that I wasn't going to get to. I actually almost left the softball to go watch some of that Summerall Purvis series when I was down in Hattiesburg last week because I was so interested in it, and I was worried that I wasn't going to get to see either of the Parker twins this season. They pulled out that 3-game series against Summerall somehow because Summerall was an absolute great team. But, Tony Farlow has got a great record, the Purvis coach. He's got a great record of developing players, and I think the Parker twins are just another example of that. And, especially JoJo. I mean, they're both Mississippi State commits, but JoJo is one of the highest-ranked players in the entire state, won the 4A Player of the Year. And I think, they returned 5 position players and 3 pitchers off a team that went 21-9 a year ago, and you look at the records that were 30-6. I mean, it makes sense that they're back here. But those guys aren't all they've got. I mean, you look at the catcher, Ethan Walker, he's a great player. Then the infield with Austin Lawler at second and Cannon Turner, an underclassman at third base. Man, they're a really good team. I think they've got a serious chance to win it. Of course, they're going to have to beat the defending champs in West Lauderdale, who's got a bunch of good players coming back as well.
Now, did you make a mistake on your last comment? I hate to call you out in public, but did you say that these Parker twins who are in the 8th grade is committed to Mississippi State? Is that correct?
That is correct. They are all, and if you look at a list of prospects across the state, they are all committed to Mississippi State. I don't know if Mississippi State is going to take all of them. And they end up not, but if you look at it, they're all committed to Mississippi State.
I got
Every
you.
single one of them.
Hey, a commitment's just your word. It ain't no big deal. Until the NIL offers you a condo on the beach at Malibu, things like that. Well, listen, that's a great report. Tell us about some of these players of the year in baseball, like from 1 through 6. Did you have them like for instance in 6A baseball? Who was probably the best player that you saw?
Give me 1 second, fellas.
Yeah,
Okay,
we good.
I'm sorry I caught you a little off guard.
No, you're okay. I'm just about choking to death over here. Just give me 2
okay.
seconds.
All right.
Let's see. Okay. Well, I'm glad you asked. Now, the Mr. Baseball Award, I'm really glad we started doing this. This is the first year for it, and I actually got to serve on the panel that got to select these guys, and I'm going to tell you, they did a great job with it. We had coaches from the North and the South on the panel, and it was really cool to hear their perspective on it. But if you look at the list, I think we got some great players. I think you and I had mentioned off the air, T.J. Dunsford from East Central. He's the 5A Player of the Year. He's been great for them for several years now. Campbell Smithwick, the catcher from Oxford, was the 6A Player of the Year. This guy, I'm telling you, he's committed to Ole Miss, and if he was playing for him, he'd have helped him this year. There's no doubt. He looks like a player. JoJo Parker from Purvis, as we mentioned earlier, is a fantastic player. Hank Eaton from Kasuth, Everett Johnson from East Union in 2A, and then in 1A was Dylan Rousey from Biggersville. But I'm telling you, this was one of the harder votes that I have ever done because we've got so much baseball talent in Mississippi. So we're going to see a couple of these guys. Everett Johnson from East Union still playing. JoJo Parker still playing. T.J. Dunsford still playing. So 3 of the 6 Mr. Baseball winners on display at Trustmark Park next week, or I guess I should say today.
Okay. All right. Now listen, we're gonna turn into the left lane for just a few minutes, and I hope I don't get you off course very much or surprise you. But tell us your take on the college baseball season as we kind of wrap up this segment of the show.
Well, Well, I'm, obviously disappointed in with the two SEC programs and how they performed. I thought they each had, a good chance to be pretty good this year. If some younger guys were able to step up and fill some roles, and that just kind of didn't happen. Of course, there were injuries along the way for both of them. But would be, I was very surprised. I mean, considering we're talking about the past two national champions at the step back that they took this year. Southern Miss just, cruising right along. I mean, I don't know what else you would expect from a Scott Berry team. I know they're trying to get to 40 wins for the 6th year in a row. They're just kind of a model of consistency. Although I don't know that they are good enough to win, a super regional. I think if they get into a regional and get deep in it, they've got some depth on the pitching mound. But in a 3-game series where you're going head to head, that game 2 matchup, you're probably not going to have the upper hand on the mound. You got that game 1 starter, Tanner Hall, is fantastic. But after that, there's a sharp drop off. I actually got to see Southern Miss a little bit this past weekend after when the softball wrapped up early. I stuck around and watched a couple of games. I think they can make some noise. I just don't know how far they can get unless they have some guys step up and maybe give some out-of-body performance on the pitching mound. And as far as everybody else, I mean, I hear Carey is off to the NAIA World Series, so that's fantastic. And typically, top to bottom, I would put our programs in, whatever division of the NCAA or NAIA that they compete in. I would put our teams up against just about any other state in any given year. Like I said, just a little, disappointing at the top this year. But I think both of those programs have everything that they need and everything in place to bounce back quickly.
Tyler, this is Marshall, and I got the old time clock going off over here, brother. Listen, we sure do appreciate you taking time to be with us and bringing all that you know about baseball in Mississippi to the table. Thank you so much for being with us.
I appreciate it, fellas.
We're going to hang on for us just a minute. We're going to sign off for a break, and we'll talk to you during the break. Just hold on a minute, Tyler. But right now, Dale and I are going to take a break to hear from some of our sponsors. We'll be back with the final segment of tonight's Brouhaha right after the commercial.
Phillips Building Supply in Laurel, your hometown building supply store since 1954. We are locally owned and pride ourselves on helping our customers find exactly what they need. From foundations to roofs to doors and windows, Phillips has it. For tools, hardware, lumber, and plywood, visit Phillips Building Supply.
Welcome back, everyone. Old Tyler, he sure is a blessing every time we have him on here. He's a faithful contributor to the Brouhaha, is he not?
He does. He brings us a lot of information, doesn't
He
he?
really does. He really does. So, we got the lowdown on that. I want to ask you, this is kind of a, I don't know, it's got a baseball flavor to it when we get to the end of it. I want to ask you, Dale, as a fan or a player, what's the worst loss that you've been associated with, the one that bothers you the most?
The worst loss.
Yeah. I'm going to tell you, I'm going to throw one out while you're thinking, because I hit you with this. You had no idea this question was coming.
Yeah.
Folks, this is we catching him it's the way you got to do the master. You got to throw him stuff, but he feels it. He's taking it into his glove. He's getting ready to get it out of that glove with his throwing hand and throw it, so he's working on his answer. But I'm going to tell you a loss that I remember that really sticks in my craw. And then maybe you'll have time. I'm going to share one. Wayne County High School versus Brookhaven. 2004 at Brookhaven, playoff game. We lost it. You remember that one?
To the pizza man.
Oh.
Jimmy John.
Oh, my God. He gets that 55-yard quarterback sneak for a touchdown, but the thing that gets me is when he throws that pass down there, his time's running out, and the guy's laying on his back down there in the end zone and catches. But anyway, that's the one that really sticks in my craw. You got one that sticks in your craw?
I don't know if I got a high school game.
It doesn't matter. Any game.
I mean, when I was growing up, I remember I was a big Baltimore Colt fan, I've seen so many high school games, I don't know if I could pick one or not. But as far as the pros, I was a big Baltimore Colt fan. I was a big Johnny Unitas fan. So in the mid-'60s, they went over to Green Bay, and they didn't have a quarterback. Unitas was hurt. The backup was hurt. So they played Tom Matty at quarterback, and he was a running back, fullback for them. They put him at quarterback because he had taken some snaps in college at Ohio State. And they put a wristband on him and made his plays real simple. And those teams played 5 or 6 overtimes. And then a couple years later, I'm watching of course, the Kansas City Chiefs and the Miami Dolphins playing, and I like Kansas City from the AFL, at that time, because they had another quarterback I liked, Lenny Dawson.
Lynn Dawson.
And so,
16.
Yep. And so they got beaten 6 overtimes.
Man.
And so, those are 2 crushing losses. But I guess my most famous crushing loss was when the Colts lost to the Jets. In the Super Bowl III.
Yeah.
Joe Willie.
Yeah.
But that changed the NFL.
It did. It did.
It made the NFL better.
I got one. I came across this, and the title of this is High School Baseball Team Suffers Agonizing Championship Loss After Premature Celebration. Now, you basically what happened, they were down, they got what they thought was the last out. Now, this is in New York, okay, Hornell High School playing Palmyra Macedonia High School up there. Okay, they threw the strike, and the catcher he dropped it. Okay, so he's supposed to throw it first, right?
Or tag the runner.
Or tag the
Or tag the batter.
Well, they started celebrating the victory. Mm-hmm. That was the last out. They were ahead by 1. And as they were celebrating the victory, the other team circles the bases. And guess what? They snatched defeat from the jaws of victory. Can you imagine how bad that's going to feel for the rest of their lives? I remember things like that.
Oh, I think I would too.
Oh, how terrible.
That would be like forgetting. It's almost like, the old saying, you got to cross your T's and dot your I's, and they just didn't finish it like they should have, unfortunately. Yeah, that would be I just assume that the catcher involved will never make it get over that. Never. You hate it for them. Yeah. But it's sure easy to get caught up in the moment, is it not, Dale? Oh, yeah, I would think so.
But you and I are not going to be guilty of that, because we know we have a time limit, and we're about the end of our time for tonight's show. I do want to remind everybody that you can keep up with us at the Brouhaha on Facebook. That's right, the Brouhaha, and on our YouTube channel, where everything's chronicled, all of our past guests. You can go there, and that's also at the Brouhaha. But that's going to do it for our time tonight, folks. We thank you for listening. We appreciate our sponsors, but it has come to the time of the show where it is time to say goodbye, Dale.
Goodbye, Dale.
And we'll see you next week for more of the Brouhaha. Get us out of here, Jamie.
You've been listening to the Brouhaha with Dale McKee and Marshall Wood. Heard Tuesday evening, 6 p.m. on WABO. For more of the Brouhaha, follow us during the week on Facebook and WABO.